So, I gave up my college savings to help cover my brother's cancer treatment. But my family had the nerve to tell me to pack my bags and leave the house in 2 days so his girlfriend could move in to support him. Yeah, you read that right. I'm an 18-year-old girl, and for the past 2 years, I've been helping out my 26-year-old brother, who was diagnosed with osteosarcoma about 2.5 years ago. It's been super tough for him to find work since then, especially the kind of labor-intensive jobs he'd always done. He couldn't go to college because our dad passed away around the same time, and honestly, we never had much money to start with. Dad's sudden death in a car accident made things even worse. Mom had never worked a day in her life since she got married young and stayed at home. So, when Dad died, my brother had to step up at 18 and take care of us. I was just 10 then. Mom also managed to find a job, and some neighbors chipped in to help us adjust to our new reality. I was old enough to fend for myself, so at least they didn't have to worry about childcare costs for me. Still, money was always tight. I remember how stressed out my mom and brother were all the time. Before my dad passed, things were already tough because my parents had eloped and started from scratch with no support system. But at least when Dad was around, he made everything bearable with his vibrant personality. After he was gone, it was like the light in our lives dimmed, and none of us have truly been happy since. When my brother got sick, continuing his warehouse job was out of the question. Those jobs required heavy lifting, and we didn't want him to risk it. He tried to push through for a while, but eventually had to stop. Mom kept working as a receptionist, but her income wasn't enough. So I started chipping in, working part-time since I was 14. Instead of saving up for college and an apartment, my money went to my brother's medical bills since he lost his job in healthcare. It was insanely expensive, and we often dipped into savings. I suggested reaching out to nonprofit organizations or the hospital because I knew there were programs that could help us. But my brother and mom were just too proud to ask for charity. They wouldn't even let me start a GoFundMe for him. So there went all my savings. Despite sacrificing everything for them, a couple of months ago, they had the audacity to kick me out because my brother wanted his girlfriend Maria, who's 22, to move in for support. Maria's been with my brother for the past 2 years, starting a bit before his diagnosis. I thought they'd break up when he told her about his illness, but she stuck around. In the beginning, she was really shy and only talked to him. She'd never stay for dinner, always saying she had to go back to her aunt. Later, we found out she's an orphan, left with her aunt when her parents went on vacation and never returned. No one knows if they had an accident or what, but they've been gone for years. Maria comes from a similar financial background as us and met my brother while working at a coffee shop opposite his workplace. Initially, I liked her. She was quiet but sweet. As she opened up, I thought they had a real shot since she was willing to stay with him through his illness. But my view of her changed when I found out my brother was helping her out financially too. He'd sometimes mention giving her money because her aunt wasn't treating her well and she had to pay rent and expenses. I thought it was absurd because we were barely scraping by ourselves. But my mom didn't see anything wrong with it, saying he was doing it out of love. She believed that since Maria was willing to sacrifice so much for him, the least he could do was help her out financially. I wasn't sure exactly how much she was getting from him, but it felt like we were barely managing ourselves, and it was frustrating. So, I always thought that just because my brother had cancer, it didn't mean he shouldn't live his life like everyone else. But my mom acted like Maria, his girlfriend, was doing him a massive favor by being with him, and that felt super weird to me. I didn't say anything, though. At the end of the day, we were family, and I knew we'd stick together no matter what. Dad always wanted it that way, and I believed things would work out as planned. I crunched the numbers and realized by the end of last year that there was no way I'd be able to go to college or get my own place, because I was helping out the family financially. I never mentioned it to anyone, because I didn't want mom or my brother to feel guilty. So I kept working full-time to support us. But then, out of nowhere, about 2 months ago, mom told me she wanted me to find a place and move out. I was totally thrown off because I had just turned 18. I figured I'd be living at home like my brother, who was working and still staying with us. When I asked why, Mom said my brother had asked Maria to move in because she had a big fight with her aunt and couldn't go back. Our house was too small for everyone, so Mom thought I should move out since I had some money saved up. She also thought it would be good for my brother to have Maria around for emotional support. I was stunned. After everything I'd sacrificed for my family, I couldn't believe she was treating me like that. I refused at first, but then she called me selfish, saying we didn't know how much time my brother had left. It was all so ridiculous. I even talked to my brother, hoping this wasn't his idea, but sadly, it was. He thanked me for all I'd done, but asked me to do this one last favor. He said if he was going to die soon, he wanted Maria with him. His condition had been stable, not better or worse, so I found it odd that he'd prefer Maria, who he'd been with for just 2 years, over his own family. Unlike Maria, I had made real sacrifices, like giving up my future and education. But when he said he really loved her and was willing to ask me to move out for her, I felt like all my sacrifices were for nothing. Out of spite, I decided to move out and cut ties with them. This wasn't the family my dad envisioned. If he were around, he wouldn't have let this happen. So I had to look out for myself. I crashed with friends for a few weeks until I found a dingy little apartment in a sketchy neighborhood. The rent was manageable, and I was just glad to have a roof over my head without being a burden on my friends' families. My new roommates were also going through their own struggles, and we bonded pretty quickly. None of us came from financially stable backgrounds, which is probably why we clicked so well. They've been super kind to me. For the past 2 months, I haven't had any contact with my family, and I miss them a lot. We were really close before everything fell apart. They never reached out, even after everything I gave up for my brother. I didn't block them, hoping they'd contact me at some point, but they didn't. Until recently. Mom called a few days ago, and I thought she was going to apologize, so I answered. But no, she was upset because Maria had vanished, breaking up with my brother over text the night before. Maria said she tried hard, but couldn't handle the idea of losing him eventually, so she cut ties before it got even harder. She told him not to contact her, saying she was going far away. For 2 months, Maria had been living with us rent-free, not contributing to any expenses, and now she was gone. Just like that. So, Maria finally had enough money to leave, and she thanked all of us for letting her live with my brother. But now she had to think about herself, right? In reality, she totally played my brother for a fool and used him. I mean, I didn't even think it was possible for someone to use a person as poor as us, especially someone who was suffering from cancer. But hey, Maria pulled it off. You gotta give her credit. She was pretty smart about it. She knew she wasn't pretty or well off enough to snag someone richer than my brother. So she played it safe but clever. She had him wrapped around her finger and then just dumped him when she didn't need him anymore. Honestly, it reminded me of how my family treated me. So, when my mom asked for my help to deal with this mess, saying my brother was miserable and couldn't stop crying, I was like, nope. She wanted me to help track Maria down to at least give my brother some closure. But I just laughed and told her it was karma for what they did to me. I even told her I hoped he never got any closure because, after how they treated me, they didn't deserve it. Then I hung up and blocked them. Later, I talked to my roommates about it. They were kind of skeptical about my reaction, but didn't say I did anything wrong. They thought my feelings were completely valid and said they might have done something similar in my shoes. But then they asked if this was really how I wanted to end things with my mom and brother, considering my brother wasn't going to make it much longer. They wanted me to think about what I wanted to do to avoid any future regrets. They didn't push me to apologize or reach out, just gave me something to think about. Just to be clear, my roommates have been awesome and really supportive. They're just trying to give me a different perspective, and I appreciate that. Anyway, I've been thinking about it for a few days and still can't decide. So here I am, asking if I was wrong for telling my mom and my brother that it's karma that his girlfriend dumped him after freeloading for 2 months. Oh, and by the way, my parents eloped because both sets of grandparents were against their relationship. I don't know the details since they never talked about it. They've always been super secretive about their past, so I never figured out why they had to run away. All I know is that our families didn't approve and probably wouldn't have approved of us either. We've never had any contact with our extended family, and I don't even know their names, so asking them for help was never an option. As for why Maria never went to live with any of her relatives, I have no idea. I never asked because I was always busy with work and didn't want to pry. Update time. I had another chat with my roommates to clear the air. I felt like I needed to explain my situation again, even though they already knew it. They reassured me they weren't judging me. It turns out one of my roommates had a similar situation. She left her family after a huge fight with her dad because she wanted to study literature instead of staying to join the family business. She hadn't spoken to them for 6 months until her mom called to say her dad had passed away from a heart attack. Her biggest regret was not trying to make things right with him before he died. She did go to his funeral, but her family was super judgmental, so she hasn't kept in touch with them much since. We had a great talk, and I'm thankful for their support. We're all good now and understand each other's perspectives. So get this. I've decided I'm not talking to my mom or my brother until they apologize. They might think I've cut them off completely because I blocked their phone numbers, but they can still reach out to me on social media. I'm sticking to my guns on this. No apology, no conversation. They've tried to get in touch, but not in the way I expected. Instead of just coming to me directly, they roped in our next-door neighbor, Jennifer. She's been a family friend forever, a single woman in her late 40s who's always looked out for us. I've always respected her, but this time she overstepped. Yesterday, she texted me saying my mom and brother were really upset and didn't expect me to act like this. She went on about how my brother was heartbroken over Maria and needed my support. Oh, and she threw in that my dad would have been disappointed in me too. First off, I can't do anything about Maria leaving my brother. We're not friends, and I certainly can't convince her to come back. And secondly, it's super convenient that they're glossing over what they did to me. My dad would have been upset about that because I've sacrificed so much for my family, and they threw me under the bus for Maria, someone they barely knew. So, thanks, but no thanks, Jennifer. I don't owe them anything anymore. Fast forward 2 weeks, and I thought my family had given up. Nope, I was wrong. This morning, they showed up at my place. Obviously, I've cut off the so-called friend who gave them my address. I had made it crystal clear to all my friends that my family wasn't supposed to know where I live. But one genius decided to ignore my instructions, thinking he was doing me a favor. Seriously, who cares about what I actually want, right? Anyway, my family found out where I lived, and they came over because they thought talking to me on social media wasn't appropriate. It was ridiculous. I didn't even want to open the door, but they were ready to wait outside all day if they had to. My roommates were home, so I asked if it was cool to let them in, and they didn't mind. So I let them in, not out of warmth or forgiveness, but just to get this over with. I hoped they'd apologize, but nope. They just talked about how terrible they felt and how much they missed me. They didn't say sorry. Instead, they wanted me to come back home because they suddenly thought it wasn't safe where I was living. Funny, they hadn't cared about my safety for months. I told them I didn't want them around or trying to contact me anymore. They had plenty of chances to apologize and make things right, but they didn't. They were just being selfish, and I needed to think about my own future. At that point, they got offended and said they had nothing to apologize for, since my brother was just trying to help and didn't know it'd blow up like this. I started to lose my temper because they were still justifying their actions. I was blunt and rude, and eventually they stopped arguing and said if I really didn't want to talk to them anymore, they'd cut ties with me. They claimed they came to... So, yeah, it was never going to happen. I mean, people like them just can't get me. And honestly, I can't get them either. When they finally left, my roommates came back out and actually apologized. They had no clue my family was like that. Anyway, that's all in the past now. I'm just focused on my future. My family didn't care about me when I needed them, so I'm going to treat them the same way now. Update 3. Hey guys, it's been almost a year since I left home, and things have been going pretty well. I was working at a local grocery store as a floor worker for a few months, but I recently landed a job as a salesperson at a furniture company. It's a big deal because I'm making more money now. I'm still living with my roommate, but we're planning to move into a bigger apartment soon since we've all been saving up. I haven't talked to my family since we last met, but I know my brother's doing okay. I mean, Jennifer would definitely let me know if something happened to him. I hope they're all doing well, and maybe one day they'll realize their mistakes and try to make things right. I'd be open to it, but for now, I'm really happy with my life.